Kathryn Parks here, and today on Culture Coast, I'll be interviewing art photographer Andrea Hillebrand, coming up right after this. Welcome back, everyone, on Facebook Live. This is Culture Coast, brought to you by the Arts and Cultural Alliance. Also, a huge thank you to our presenting sponsor, Elizabeth Van Riper, Realtor with Michael Saunders and Company. Thank you, Elizabeth. We love you. And also, if you're watching from Facebook Live, then I want to know. So comment and tell us where you're watching from. And also, if you're a fan of Andrea's, then leave a comment and tell me that as well. So on that note, I'd like to introduce Andrea Hillebrand.
Hi.
Hello, hello, hello. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on Culture Coast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure.
Yeah, and so we've known each other for a number of years, somewhere between, I'd say, like 5 and 10 years. And I first met you through my husband, Jonathan Parks, who was a fan of yours as a photographer.
Thank you.
And so I wanted to ask you, because for me, photography is not something that I'm familiar with as much. I mean, I like taking a good picture, but I don't really know much about what I'm doing. So tell me, how did you get into photography, and what were some of your early influences?
Well, my career started 25 years ago, but prior to that, I was always interested in photography, and I took classes and attended some workshops, and essentially it grew from there.
Cool. Okay. So then, tell me about some of your early black and white photography.
My early black and white photography was very influenced by a photographer named Sally Mann, who had a very organic way of photographing her children and nature. And I didn't go quite to the extent that she did in terms of how her images were set up and the things that her children did, but it was very influential to me in terms of the natural settings. And so I photographed my children that way, and then I started photographing their friends, and then before I knew it, it just started to grow from there.
Very cool. And then how did you transition? Eventually, you told me that you started getting more into fashion photography.
Yes, I was very interested in doing creative projects, and as my girls got older, they were wonderful subjects for that. And so it allowed me to experiment, try different things, work in different mediums, and from there, the projects started to come. So I was able to do more and more artistically.
Great. And then I know you and I actually had some fun. When I turned 30, I got a gift from my husband to do a photo shoot. So he knows me like really well. And there was I called it a fairy tale photo shoot.
Yes.
And so I think we have a couple pictures to show of me as an evil queen.
That was a great shoot.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. And it was wonderful for me to work with you in the sense that you were able to be that free and that comfortable and just go for it because you're used to being photographed and you're comfortable. And so that's always a great pleasure for me. It's when I work with other people who are not professional or used to being photographed, it always takes time to get to know people and make them feel comfortable and have them trust me, and they get to see how I'm photographing them and they learn how to be photographed. So then I get even more from them.
Right, but even so, I remember one thing I learned when I was working with you. I mean, I will smile for the camera, but you would explain that sometimes a person just needs to relax. Like you try and capture them when they're not all scrunched up everywhere.
Right, and I think it helps a lot. I give a lot of direction to people, and I can see what they're doing. And so when I show them, like, this is what happens when you're doing this, they're like, oh, I get it. So then they relax, and And then they start trusting me and listening because I can see how it's looking. And it's hard when you're being photographed. You don't really know what you're doing, how it's translating.
Right.
So getting people to feel comfortable and just be loose.
Right.
Yeah.
That's probably half the battle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I know that you also now do a lot of portraiture.
Yes, I do.
So tell me about that.
It's wonderful because I get to photograph all kinds of people that need all different kinds of portrait work. And again, it's wonderful to be able to interact with them. It's such a collaborative effort to be able to make them feel comfortable enough for me to photograph them. I always like the photographs to be true to what they're doing and who they are as a person. So making sure they're wearing what they would typically wear, make sure they're in a setting or an environment that either speaks to who they are or makes sense if it's a business portrait for what they do. So I'm very particular about that. And I'm an expert in Photoshop, so I always make sure everything's perfect afterwards. So nobody ever has to worry because I'll just take care of a little magic afterwards and it's all good. So I enjoy it.
That's cool. Yeah, these days Photoshop really matters.
Yeah, it helps.
It does. It does help. So, all right. So, let's transition a little bit into what you love doing, and that is your art photography.
Yes.
And tell me a little bit about how that came about.
Well, I feel like it came about in a way in which I didn't know would happen. My mother's an artist, and as she has never driven. So as a child, we always lived close to downtown, and we walked everywhere. And so she would continually point out things that intrigued her, amused her, inspired her, and I feel in that way she's taught me how to see. And so when I went to Paris for the first time, I was mostly photographing the architecture because that's what I was excited about doing at the time, and I still do that kind of photography when I'm traveling. But when I came home, I realized that amongst all those pictures, I also had the first window reflection I took without realizing. And I like to think it was accidental, but really, given my mother's love of window displays and my experience and her influence with me as a child, I can see now where it came from. But it was a black and white photograph of these ballerina tutus. And I was photographing the window display, but I wasn't thinking about the architecture behind me, which was reflected in the glass.
Right.
So then it just added a completely new dimension to what I was doing. So,
and I think we have that photo. That it's the first of the art photos, Mark. And I think there's two photos there, guys. But if you look at it, it's the one on the black and white one. So
ballerina
you can look at that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so from that point on, I got really excited and made that my purpose when I'm traveling to different cities. That's my focus. And I still photograph architecturally, and I love shooting gardens and things like that, but the window reflections is really important to me, and that collection I've been building for the last 8 years.
Wow.
So basically, I'm photographing the window display with the reflection of the street reflected back into the glass. So they're very surreal and magical. Some are abstract, some are fashion-based, some are more thematic. Horses show up a lot in my window displays, and sometimes I'll be photographing something which I think is interesting or has potential, and I'll get home and I'll looking at all my images on my computer. I'm like, okay, well, that was not all that exciting. And then I'll notice something off to one side that I hadn't even noticed. And if I had shifted my weight, it never would have happened. So there's always a little magic involved as well.
Yeah, that's really cool.
It is. It's exciting.
And I know also you travel a lot, and that really inspires your work.
It does.
So tell me about some of the more inspiring places that you've been and how that gets your creative juices flowing.
Well, Paris, because of the architecture, and Paris is such an elegant, beautiful city, so I love creating window displays there, and they tend to be a little bit more fashion-based. New York is amazing. It's one of my favorite cities, and honestly, I feel to date, for me, the most creative and artistic in terms of window displays. We all know the Bergdorf windows, how extraordinary they are. So for me to go and photograph those are always amazing. I get the most creative work coming out of there, and interestingly enough, quite a few Chanel window displays have out in New York have been recurringly, sorry, not has occurred many times to be the main ones that come out of the whole time that I'm there. Tokyo was amazing because it took me a day or so to get into a rhythm because the city is mostly office buildings.
Oh, wow.
So office buildings being reflected into window displays is a little tricky.
Right.
But I ended up finding some amazing window displays that had katakana on the glass, and you could see the Kanji Street signs, and then the images started to come. But that's an interesting place. Yeah.
That sounds very cool. So, so our presenting sponsor, Elizabeth Van Riper, also knows your work, and I told her you were going to be on the show, and she said this. She said this about your work. So, which I thought was great. Her work is so atmospheric, exotic, and often sensual. She has a fabulous eye for tone and composition.
Oh, thank you, Elizabeth. That's a wonderful compliment. I appreciate that insight.
I thought so too. She's got some great adjectives in here.
Yes, yes.
So tell me, you make a very clear distinction between your art and your commercial work. Tell me a little bit about that, because to me, I think, a photographer is an artist, so any photo they take is going to be like art. But you sort of feel differently about different types of work that you do.
I do, and yet there is that recurring theme, because when I travel, I see so much beauty that stays with me, and because I seek to create beauty, that's what I draw on. So when I'm doing someone's portrait, I'm seeing the beauty within them, and I'm bringing that out, and I've created an environment that I feel is the best to show who they are as a person. And so that's a very collaborative process, but in essence, it's really the same thing when I'm shooting in a city, walking down the street and finding window displays. I'm seeking the beauty of the world around me, and it's my way of interpreting it. So yeah, seeking and creating beauty is really weaves all through my work.
And you have had some success as a photographer. You've had some exciting showings, and you've got work for sale at some really neat places. So what is some advice you would give to photographers who are starting out in this area? How do you create a network around yourself? How do you make it happen?
Well, first of all, do what you love, because then it's infectious, and do everything you can to be really good at it, because then those standards will carry the day. I am grateful to all the clients that I have. They've been very supportive to me, or over the years. It's been great. So that's allowed me to create a network. So when I wanted to start presenting my art, I had a lot of support for that first show, and I was testing to see if it was really viable or not. And each time I sell a piece, it's another indication that I can keep doing what I'm doing, keep traveling. So there's been a lot of effort and investment, and I feel it's starting to pay off. And I don't know what else to do but keep doing what I love and keep going. So I would just say build a base, a network that allows you to connect with.
Right. That's great advice for any profession, for sure. And then what is it about being in Sarasota and working in Sarasota? What do you love about doing that?
Sarasota is paradise. It's a wonderful place to live. It's a wonderful place to come home to. And because I'm primarily a location shooter, it makes my work effortless, because the weather is amazing, so I can shoot anywhere, and I have all kinds of spots all over town. Over the years, I have all kinds of areas that I can draw on, so it's a wonderful place to live and work.
And then where could we see your work?
I'm represented by Rosenbaum Fine Art. They're based in Boca Raton, and I'm on their website, and they go to High Point with my work, and they have it in the showroom there. And I have also 2 pieces with Horchow and Neiman Marcus. And I have art in my studio here in Sarasota, and Studio G on State Street has a large 40 by 60 metal panel there. So I print both metal and on canvas. So
Okay.
depending on someone's interest, if they want something a little bit more modern and contemporary, the metal pieces float 3/4 of an inch off the wall and are very contemporary looking.
So what do you mean you print on metal? It's like metal?
Yeah,
that you're
it is. It's
printing on?
recycled aluminum,
Okay.
and it's a dye sublimation process where the image is actually embedded into the aluminum. So it's amazing for the window displays because it's very silvery and reflective.
Ooh, that does sound really
artistic
cool.
photo canvas prints all of my work, both my canvases and my metal, and they're amazing. The canvas is wonderful because it's a little bit more traditional, and it has a little bit more saturated look, and for some people that fits more in their environment. And my travel photography, my architectural stuff looks wonderful on the canvas, but I think the metal is the most exciting.
And then, of course, you have websites that people
I do.
can go. And,
I do, in
and-
my studio.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Cool. So then I like to ask everyone this question: what is something you do that has nothing to do with the arts?
I play tennis.
You play tennis.
I play tennis. I play tennis, and I'm studying Italian. So
Wow. Well, I
Yeah.
know Sarasota has a huge tennis community.
yes, it does.
I'm
it
not
does.
one of them, but where do you play?
I used to play at Bath and Racket, and now recently I play at Payne Park.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so it's wonderful.
And you have like tennis friends you go
I
and
do.
you, like,
Yes.
hit the ball
I
with?
absolutely. Yeah, singles, doubles. Yeah,
Oh,
it's a lot
yeah?
of fun. Yeah.
Nice.
I enjoy
nice.
it.
And then what was the other thing you mentioned?
Studying Italian.
Studying Italian.
Yes, I spend a lot of time in Italy, so I really need to learn.
Can you say
Italian.
something for me in Italian? No pressure.
Ah, piacere.
What does that mean?
Nice to meet you.
Oh, okay. Nice piacere too.
Piacere.
Piacere. I cannot.
Prego.
I cannot roll my R's. Oh gosh, I just told the world. Here's an actor who can't roll her R's. I tried really hard for a while and I couldn't quite learn, but I know a D sound is similar to an R. So if you were to say vode, it's almost like vode,
Vorrei.
vorrei, which means what?
I would like.
I was. I'm sure I fooled all the Italians with that.
Well, don't ask me too many more questions about Italian because I'm just learning.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you so much
Oh, thank you.
for joining us today. You know, I
Thank
really
you.
enjoyed learning more about your work, as did all of our Facebook Live
Well,
audience.
thank you so much.
Our pleasure. And that is it for our show today. We would like to thank our presenting sponsor, Elizabeth Van Riper, with Michael Saunders and Company. Elizabeth enriches the real estate experience of her customers with her extensive market knowledge and involvement with Sarasota's diverse cultural landscape. And we'd also like to thank Beautiful You for providing my wardrobe and iStage Homes for the awesome set. So, our next show is going to be next week, November 1st, and we'll be chatting with Christopher Wilson, chairman of the Sarasota Architectural Foundation, about one of my favorite weekends of the year, Sarasota Mod Weekend. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.